My name is Corrine Reynolds. I am the Director of Nightlife Economy for the City of Boston. I want to welcome you all to the liquor license application process webinar that we are co-hosting with the ABCC and MRA. A few things before we start the show. Here are some Zoom tips. You will be muted throughout the presentation, and your videos will not be visible to the public or to us. If you do have any questions, please use the Q&A section of your screen. So the presentation will be followed by a Q&A and comments. During the presentation, all mics will be muted, as I said. If during the presentation a question does come up, please put it in that Q&A section. Either one of us, panelists that is not presenting, will answer it during the presentation, or it will be addressed at the end of the presentation. With that being said, I'm going to kick it over to our first speaker. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Corrine. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen Clark. I'm the President and CEO of the Massachusetts Restaurant Association. This is an exciting time, real potential for growth in the city of Boston, and we are really excited to help get new restaurateurs up and running. I recognize that there are some experienced restaurateurs in the audience as well as new restaurateurs. I do want to make a quote. Back in 2014, we initiated some legislation that created a caterer's liquor license, and the chair of the ABCC at the time came in and said, "Congratulations on your new liquor licenses. Also, I feel bad for you. You now have liquor licenses," because there is a lot of requirements and guidelines that come with the process of issuing and serving a liquor license. And so we want to make sure everybody is compliant and keeping people on the right side of the regulation. So that's one of the main things that MRA does. And we're here for you. I want to thank the partnership with the City of Boston, the licensing division, and the ABCC. We immediately, as soon as this legislation passed, we all got on the phone and said, we need to get together. We need to do some seminars. We need to do webinars. We need to give people the tools they need to be successful in this process. So thank you very much for your partnership. We've committed to doing a number of future webinars. We're not going to be able to cover every single thing that goes into opening a restaurant and successfully opening a restaurant, but we figured we'd start with the baseline requirements today, and in the future we'll do webinars around communicating with wholesalers, meeting with food distributors, all those other types of contacts that people need navigating the restaurant space and being successful in the city of Boston. So if you could go to the next slide. So every restaurant in Massachusetts needs certain things, and we figured we would start with a list of those, and obviously they're on the screen, and I'll just go through them a little bit. But every restaurant, in order to safely operate in Massachusetts, needs a ServSafe Manager certificate. That is a knowledge of the food code, and there's training resources available from the MRA if that is needed. You need ServSafe alcohol. How do you properly serve alcohol safely? Every operator needs allergen training as part of their opening requirements. You need proof of liquor liability insurance in order to receive a liquor license. You need a hood vent inspection, and you also need choke safe training. There are various levels of enforcement and requirements at municipal levels, and municipalities do have the ability to set requirements above and beyond these requirements, but this is baseline knowledge that you're going to need to run a successful restaurant. And as I said, if you don't have a resource to get this training, please reach out to the MRA. We are here. We are happy to facilitate that training as much as possible. We have the ability, we can come to you if certain people are there, especially ChokeSafe. We can do that around the state. We can do online training for ServSafe. Alcohol certification, again, it depends on municipality of whether it's in person or online. So a lot of good resources that are there. And I mentioned that there's a number of different things in a restaurant. We decided to focus on technology for today, of just different things that people need to think about as they're navigating the restaurant process. So obviously you need a POS system to process your orders. How are you going to pay for things? How are you going to schedule your employees? How are you going to provide online ordering and delivery? The pandemic has taught us one thing is that people still order takeout and delivery. Most restaurants are 20% takeout built into their P&Ls. So that is an important aspect in planning a successful restaurant. Obviously, as you get more advanced, you get into reservation systems. You got to figure out how you want to pay people, what's your payroll going to be, and of course, protecting yourself. There's a lot of people that target small restaurant owners and small business owners with malware and phishing scams. So you do want to stay up to date on that and make sure you are serving yourself and protecting yourself. So I promised the experts today that I would be really quick. We're really on the back end of things and trying to help people thrive in their restaurant operations. What you're really here for is how do I actually get a license and how do I make it happen? So my contact information is on the next slide. And if you need any contact at MRA, please let us know. Please reach out to us. Please head to our website. As I said, we're here to be helpful. We're here to facilitate as many conversations as possible. I look forward to being on future webinars in the future where we talk about best practices and food ordering and alcohol ordering and building a wine list and building a successful liquor list and all those other fun things that come along with opening a restaurant. So congratulations to everyone for this unique opportunity. We look forward to continuing to add to the thriving restaurant industry in Massachusetts, especially in the city of Boston, and more especially in the neighborhoods that have previously been underserved. So thank you very much to the city and the ABCC for the partnership, and I'm happy to turn it over to Kathleen Joyce for the city of Boston.
Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon. My name is Kathleen Joyce. I'm chair of the Boston Licensing Board, and you'll hear in a little bit from my colleague, Danny Green, who is the executive secretary to the board. Danny and I work close together on any application that comes before the board, and we work very closely with Steve Clark from MRA and the entire team, including Ralph and Ryan at the ABCC. And this is a great opportunity, and we're grateful to be a part of this. So to back up a little bit, the licensing board grants all sorts of licenses. We grant and regulate licenses and hold hearings on violations and on license applications. The types of licenses that are under our purview are common victualler or restaurant licenses, alcoholic beverage licenses, in-holder licenses, lodging houses and dormitories, billiards and bowling, fortune tellers, and temporary outdoor dining. Most important for today's conversation is obviously the alcohol licenses. Next slide. So as you heard Steve say, we are really excited about these new licenses that the state has given to the city of Boston. We have 225 licenses in total. 198 of them are geographically restricted to certain zip codes. 195 in the different neighborhoods, plus 3 in Oak Square. These licenses cannot be sold. They're what we would call restricted licenses. And should a restaurant close down after using the license, it has to be returned to the city. There are also 15, one more thing about these types of licenses, food is required. Food service is required on site for these types of licenses. And then we have 15 community licenses for nonprofits, small theaters, and outdoor spaces. And food does not need to be prepared on site for those 15 licenses. We also have 12 transferable all alcohol licenses that can go anywhere in the city. And these licenses are what we call for value. They have a dollar value attached to them. Next slide, please. So this map shows the identifying zip code restricted license areas. And in addition to what's highlighted on the map, the additional 3 in Oak Square are also available. Next slide. So your application starts with the local board. Applications must be submitted through our licensing board's online portal. Our staff will review all submitted applications and will schedule a hearing date once your application is complete. A complete application to us includes you filling out the ABCC's application and all required supporting documentation. And we'll go through, Ralph and his team will go through what that application looks like after. Then you need to complete the community process, which is facilitated by the Office of Neighborhood Services. We will connect you with a contact in that office, And that community process can be a combination of things. It could be flyering your neighbors, it could be requiring a butters meeting. You might have to present to a civic or neighborhood association, and that process will be defined for you by the Office of Neighborhood Services. And then you need to pay the required hearing and advertising fees. Next slide. So what does it take to get a license from the city? So we take a look at the standard. The legal standard is public need. And any licensing authority in Massachusetts takes a look at whether or not your application meets the requirements of public need. We use this to determine the suitability of an alcohol license at your particular location. These factors include the number of pre-existing licenses in the area, whether the proposed license is a unique concept in the area, the traffic and noise in the area, public support, opposition, and also the reputation, character, and fitness of the applicant. The next slide. Additional considerations by the board will be considered as well. And what we are doing this time around is we are considering all completed applications received by December 6th as a group. So to evaluate these applications, the licensing board is going to consider an applicant's core business proposal and how the license will advance the city's goals to support neighborhood economic development and add to our city's diverse and vibrant culture, including how the license would enable the applicant to enhance the cultural and economic activity of the neighborhood, how the business will whether or not it will create new business and economic opportunity across our diverse communities, whether or not the application supports wealth generation for less resourced entrepreneurs, and we'll take a look at whether it promotes emerging and diverse businesses and communities while advancing the city's commercial offerings. So the timeline, people are calling us and asking, what's the timeline for these new licenses that we just received from the state? So due to the strong level of interest in all categories of licenses, whether it be the neighborhood restricted, all alcohol or beer and wine, or the community licenses, and obviously the for value licenses, the board is going to review completed applications in batches. To be considered in this first round of new applications and licenses, completed applications must be submitted by 11:59 p.m. on Friday, December 6, 2024. The board will continue to schedule hearings on a rolling basis, but will defer our final decision on licenses until all applicants have been heard and reviewed. A completed application must include all the required forms and any community process required by the Office of Neighborhood Services, generally a public meeting to discuss the proposal with neighbors. We will hold our next round of review in the spring of 2025. If an applicant has already completed their application and/or has had their hearing with the licensing board, please contact the licensing staff directly regarding the current status of your application. Next slide. So now I'd like to turn it over to Ralph and Ryan so they could talk a little bit about the ABCC website, how to navigate it and fill out an application.
Good afternoon, everyone. And on behalf of the Alcoholic Beverage Control Commission, our Chair, Gene Larizio, and the entire commission, we'd like to thank everyone for the opportunity and the great liaison with the City of Boston Licensing Authority and also the Mass Restaurant Association. The ABC is going to do two phases of the training process today. The first one we're going to talk about is navigation through the website, where you can find all the documents, support, frequently asked questions, all of that we will cover first. And then the second part is we're actually going to take an application and break it down and show you all of the different areas and the importance of the areas and where you need to really concentrate on to make it a successful process. At this point in time, I'm going to turn over the presentation to the ABC Deputy Executive Director, Ryan Melville.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ryan Melville. I'm the Deputy Executive Director. Hey, Corinne, I'm not able to share. I think it's because it says someone else is sharing. Perfect. Thank you. I'm just going to show a navigation of the website. I assume everybody can see this website. Great. So if you Google Mass ABCC, this is how you will actually identify the location where you would locate our alcohol licenses. What you'll do is when you go to the website, you can either Google it or in the PowerPoint we have the actual link. To identify a location to find a new license application, you'd select alcohol beverage retail licenses, and it will bring you to this page. As most of you are going to be applying as new licensees, you'll select apply for a new alcohol beverage license, and you will come to this page. On this page, the first thing you're going to see is the new retail application. It's a PDF if you select it. Additionally, you'll see the Corey authorization forms, which will be required to be filled out, along with an additional addendum for information for that particular license. As you scroll further down the page, you're going to see some general information about, again, a 10,000-foot view of the process for applying once, with the ABCC for an alcohol license. As Kathleen had mentioned before, you're going to go through the local board initially for your application. However, the ABCC process is also included here on the website page. I know Ralph is going to actually go through the application as part of this PowerPoint presentation, but this is where you would locate that. Additionally, if you ever have any questions, you'll see our contact information is actually on ABCC staff directory. It will be available to you for any ABCC related questions with regards to the alcohol licensing process. We will get back to you. We are available to you if you have any questions. And our goal is to help you facilitate this process to make it as easy as possible. With that being said, I'm going to send this back over for Corinne if you want to go back to the PowerPoint, and Ralph will take you through the application page by page.
All right, thank you. If you're looking right here, what Ryan is taking you through to find a new license application, this is the information you'll have. You'll find exactly where our website is located. When you click onto the homepage, you'll follow down. You'll click onto new retail license. And the only reason we're telling you retail license because there's two types of the licenses in the state. There are state licenses, which are wholesalers, manufacturers, transportation companies, storage companies. You do not want that. What you want to click on is to retail. When you click on to retail, the directions fall right to where you'll see in front of the screen here. You want to click on to apply for an alcoholic beverage retail license. Then if you follow the arrow, you will find the link to a new retail license application. Next slide. All right, on all applications, no matter what it is, they all start off with a checklist. This is the most important document you will find in the application. No matter what the transaction is, and we're only talking about a new license application, is if you are filing for an alteration of premises, change a category, change a manager, every single application starts off this way with a checklist. The checklist is there to benefit you. Before you submit your completed forms and documentation and application to the local board, it is your responsibility to make sure all of these documents there. It's not up to Danny and Kathleen and their team to chase you down for all these documents. This is your responsibility. And if you look at it, we make it very simple in plain English. We even have about the payment page. If you would click on that blue area, that actually connects you right to the link to make a payment. You make your payment, you print out the receipt, and you go right back to the application. Here's where your process starts. Next slide. All right, the next slide is the first page of the application you're going to run into is what we call the monetary transmittal forms. All right, and this is a form we use to gather some introductory information on it. I want everybody to understand we highlighted red areas there. It tells you exactly what you need to do with the document and the steps along the way. If you were to look at the middle of the document where it says the arrows pointing to transaction summary information, this is important. This is where you will put down the business entity name of your business or your corporation or your LLC, or if you are a sole proprietor. This is important because this is what we will relate to the rest of the application with. So your proposed business entity, if it's, for instance, Sacrimony LLC, that's what will go in here, not Ralph Sacrimony. I'm a member of that, but the corporation name holding the license, the business entity will be Sacrimony Inc. It's important you do that. Then as you page down, it says indication from the applicant, the transaction they'll be doing. You can do multiple transactions on this one application. So if you're going in for a new license, you're also going to have a pledge agreement tied into it. If a bank or if you're going to a financial institution, they want you to put the license up for collateral, you must ask about a pledge of license. You can do multiple items here for one fee. And the fee is $200 per application. You can have multiple transactions, just one fee, and you need to pay that in advance and submit the receipt to the Boston Board with the application. Next slide, please. All right, page 1 of the application. If you're looking at question number 1, we have put tools in here to make it very easy for you. With each of the boxes you see up type that's saying on premises, off premises, then it says type, category, class, they're all drop downs. You click on them and you will select what you want. In most cases here, everyone will be selecting an on-premise Section 12 license. You will click onto that. Type of license, as you will see the selection there. Oh, you move back there. There we go. All right. And then it will be the type is if you're going to be a restaurant, you're going to be a general on premises, you're going to be a club, all of those areas there, you have the choice to pick from. Remember, as you're moving forwards, depending if you're doing the restricted license, as Kathleen said, there must be food served with it. So you really are limited to your choices there of that category, of that type of license and selection there. The next is category. The category, there's really not many selections there. You're either going to be all alcohol, you're going to be wine and malt, or you're going to be wine, malt, and cordial. All right, there are 2 other selections you will find, which you'll see is wine only, if you only want to serve wine. If you only want to serve beer, those selections are there. And then the last category, there are 2 choices. It's either going to be, it's the category name is class. You only have 2 choices there. That's going to be either be annual or seasonal. We're feeling that 100% are going to be annual you apply for. You want to check those. You don't have to write them in, just use the drop downs. All right. And then the next is a description of your type of business, your overall type of business. You're going to do a short description there. Question number 2 is the business entity information. It's exactly what I talked about on the monetary transmittal form. Whatever entity is going to hold the license, that's what we want here. We don't want the individual's name unless you're a sole proprietor. Everything else will be based on the entity name. Then you have a DBA. Your FEIN number is very important. You will need the name of the manager, the licensed manager, then the address of the location, not your home address. The city of Boston, the ABC are going to be looking at what you propose for the licensed premises, not your home address. And then everything else is self-explanatory in that section about the phone number and email. All of that is there to assist the ABC or the local board with getting a hold of you. Also, question number 3 is description of the premises. Every part of the building that you want to license, you need to denote. One of the most common mistakes we see all the time, people say, okay, I have they only give us a description of the first floor, but they're also part of their lease is the basement. And they're going to be storing alcohol down there. So you want to make sure all of your areas are described. We break it down to literary terms, and then we break down to square feet, exits, everything down the line that you will need on that, and make sure you include all your floors. You can have multiple floors as long as they're all contiguous to each other, but you want to make sure that that detail is there because that's what the Boston Board is going to prove you at. If you forget the basement and don't tell the Boston Board and then the applications move through the process, we won't be able to approve the basement. It's going to have to go back for reapproval. We don't want to see that happen. And then number 4 is the contact information. Very important. If you have an email address you want there and a cell phone number, because the city of Boston may be reaching out to you for some additional information. And this is going, when it comes to the ABC, this is going to be assigned to an investigator, and they will be reaching out to you to go through some formalities about the licensing process, interviewing the manager, and speaking with the contact person about direct and indirect interest in the license. So those are the areas you want to make sure questions 1 through 4, you fill out complete in detail. There should be no blanks there at all because all that is important. All right, moving to page 2 of the application, look at question number 5. Again, I tell you, use the drop-down arrows there. You can select what type of legal structure you are. If you're a corporation, you're an LLC. If you're a partnership, sole proprietor, use that there. Then the drop-down below is what state of incorporation, because you may not have been incorporated in Massachusetts. You could have been incorporated in New Hampshire. A lot of companies are incorporated in Delaware. You have all those choices there to select from, date of incorporation, and then there is a question if you're publicly traded. All right. You want to answer those questions. If you're not publicly traded, you answer no, but you cannot leave the question blank. You want to make sure everything is filled in. Then moving down to probably the The second most important question, other than where the licensed premises is arising from and the name of the corporation, is question number 6. It says proposed officers, stock, or ownership interests. Any individual that is on your license, you can have one stockholder, you can have 100 stockholders. It's up to you. But every individual must be listed that has a direct or indirect interest in the license in question number 6. We put some samples in there. As you can see, test principle 1, we put the title in, which is the president, the residential address, where they're at, the percentage of ownership, if they're a director or an LLC manager, social security number, date of birth, citizenship question, residency question. All of that's got to be filled in for every person that's involved as direct interest, which means ownership in the corporation, the LLC, or the sole proprietor. You need to have that there, or the partnership. And then anybody that has an indirect interest is someone that could be for a corporation. They're the secretary of the corporation, but they have no ownership. So they have an indirect interest in the license because they have control of what goes on a corporation standpoint in day-to-day affairs. So you want to make sure all of them are listed into there. All of that information is correct, and just do a quick review where you pass in and people transpose numbers on social security numbers. We see date of births and so forth. You want to make sure all of that information is correct. As you move down to the bottom you'll see the criminal history question. It's one general question. It just says yes or no. Is anybody enlisted in question number 6 has been convicted of a felony? All right. You want to make sure that question is answered truthfully. If it's answered yes, there is directions that you need to follow and so forth in the application. If no one has, you answer no, then you will move on to the next question. Can we have the next page, please? All right. Next page is articles of organization. One of the biggest mistakes we see is articles of organization is where you have registered your corporation with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and you state who the officers, directors, LLC managers, LLC members, you state it all there. It's important that your articles of organization, the titles and the names match the ones listed in question number 6. As we talked about, you see test principle 1 in question number 6, that person was listed as the president. All right. Test principle 2 was listed as the treasurer and the secretary. So if you jump back and you look back at the question before this, you'll see all of these names match. And it's important that your corporation name that is on your license is the exact same name you will find on your articles of organization. Move to the next slide, please. All right. Corey authorization form. Every individual listed in question number 6. Either direct interest as having ownership, or a person who was just an officer director or an LLC manager, director, trustee who doesn't have ownership, all need to fill out a Corey authorization form, and it needs to be notarized. The important part about this is you want to make sure the individual that's named in the Corey, listed on the Corey, signs the Corey themselves, and we accept electronic signatures. We have a whole guide. Well, I'm not going to waste your time on it today, but there's a whole guide tells you if you do use electronic signatures, what you'll need to verify with the certification page. We accept wet signatures. All of that will be there. And then the most important is you need to have it notarized, and we'll need the stamp or the seal on it. As you can see an example down the bottom, the circle that says John Doe. Those are the most important, because at this point, what we do is we will run a Corey on every individual with direct or indirect interest in the license. And we verify for what we see in the Corey, how you answered that question. Does anyone have a felony that's involved in the license? Because under Mass General Law, Chapter 138, there is anyone that is applying for a Section 12 on-premise license, you are disqualified if you have a narcotics conviction. You cannot have ownership in the license. There are other disqualifications for off-premise. I'm not going to waste your time on that today, but just for important, that's why you want to make sure you fill those questions out correctly, because if you fill it out incorrectly, all right, there's going to be further forensic audit on the application. Why didn't you answer that question correctly? Same thing goes to the Boston board. Boston looks at this information too. And as Kathleen spoke about earlier, character and fitness is one of the approval requirements. So on the character fitness, if you don't tell the truth, all right, this could be cost you from getting the license. We don't want to see that happen. Answer it truthfully, because if you have had another felony and it's not a narcotics conviction, then you still can move on through the process, and it will go on the character and fitness and what the boards feel if you are a person of good nature and good character and fitness. Next slide, please. All right, moving on to page number 3 of the application. You look at questions 6A, B, and C. This really relates to if you have any other interest in an active license, is question 6A. You need to list it. Do not leave it blank. All right. And same thing with question 6B, previously held licenses, and question 6C. All right, because if you do not answer these questions truthfully, this is another character and fitness, and you don't want to perjure your license yourself on this application, because it could affect your license. So you want to make sure you answer all those categories. Now, if you have never owned a license and you never had disciplinary action, and all you do is just answer NA in those questions, you cannot leave them blank. Answer no of them all or write NA. Either way, we will not accept a question that is not answered. So fill the category in by checking off no or NA. Next, moving down, is to occupancy of premises. What this is giving you the right to occupy that licensed premises. You have to show proof. So it's either a lease between two parties. You could own the building, all right, or the structure, as long as you show a deed. But the key thing is to remember this, is that if it is Sacrimony LLC is the license entity, Sacrimony LLC must appear on the lease, not Ralph Sacrimony, the individual. My name can appear, but it has to be the license entity there. That's a proposed license entity, and the landlord entity, as you can see, landlord name, that entity has to appear on the lease. If it's a deed and it says Sacrimony LLC owns the property, we need to see the deed that said Sacrimony LLC owns it. What we've been seeing lately is we have Ralph Sacrimony is the owner of the real estate, but the license I'm applying for is Sacrimony LLC. So you have to do a lease or a right to occupy between Ralph Sacrimony on the deed and the business entity that's applied for the license. Next slide, please. Next page is page 4 is financial disclosure. Any transaction that exceeds $49,000, you must show back up where the cash or the loan or the financial institution where the funding has come from. So if you look at questions A, B, C, and D, the best advice I can give you, whatever numbers you put in there, letter D, they all have to add up to equal to letter D. So if you're putting in you're buying business assets, you're putting in letter C that you're getting a loan from a financial bank, all of that you want denoted. Those letters have to answer, add up to question number, to letter D. And then they have source of cash. If you're taking cash out of a bank account, all right, you will put down that, and you will show 3 months of backup bank statements from that bank account. We protect all your information. We're under the state law of 93H. Means any document you give to us that is personal information, from social security number, date of birth, any type of bank account, loan information, we protect it all by making sure all of that information is redacted that's personally involved with you. So you have to submit that to the local board. The local board runs on the exact same rules we do. So you just want to make sure you have any type of cash account that it comes from. If you're getting a gift from a family member who's going to loan you the money, you need to show where that money came from in a gift letter. Source of financing, if you're going to Bank of America, you're going to Rockland Trust, you're going to M&T Bank, you want to put down the name of the bank, how much you're getting, and you must show the loan document that is there. And the loan document is, you want to make sure it's referred to either the individual or the licensed entity. So anybody in question number 6 can be on the loan document, all right, and the licensed entity. And that is that's one of the issues you have there, is that you can do a personal loan under your name. That is acceptable for us because you're listed in question number 6. So we will accept that there, and the Boston Board will accept it too. We just want to make sure that all the documents you have are backed up, and what numbers add up and where the money came from, you want to make sure it's there. And just for your information, as I talked about earlier, remember I said you can apply for multiple transactions. If you go to a bank and you go to Rockland Trust and you're going to borrow $100,000 from them to build out your restaurant, or $200,000, whatever you're going to do, they may ask for a pledge of license. What a pledge of license is very simple. You're putting the license up as collateral. But in order to do that, you must get approval from the Boston Licensing Authority and the ABC. And if you do that, it's a very simple process. You will fill out question number 9, complete all that information. And then what we're looking for is a promissory note and a pledge agreement. Now, some of the pledge agreements include the license, the actual stock or the individual ownership certificates may be put in there, and also the inventory of liquor. All of that can be pledged. All of that has to be stated in the pledge agreement, along with the financial institution you're getting it from. Next slide, please. All right, next slide is the proposed license manager. What the license manager is, this is who is going to run the day-to-day affairs on the licensed premises. It's very important that you, as the owner, you have the right to appoint someone to be a manager. You are responsible for everything they do, because ultimately the license, or the owners of the license, or the license entity, the business entity, is responsible for the actions of the manager and of their employees. So it's you have the right to either make yourself the manager, or you can hire a manager. On question number 10, it's a very simple form to fill out. You do not want to leave any areas blank. Everything needs to be filled out. All right. We do ask for your date of birth. We ask for your social security number. Why do we ask for that? Because under Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 26, it requires character and fitness of any proposed manager. And you being a manager, we will do that. We will run a query on you. Boston will run a query to make sure that you are a person of good character and fitness. We also ask for past employment to see if you had training in being in the liquor industry. That does not disqualify you if you have never had training, but you have to answer that question. Also, we look for if you were a manager and you had disciplinary action at your former licensed premises, we want to know about it. And then the most important is you, the proposed manager, signs this form, not anyone else. You sign it on the pains and penalties of what you're telling us correctly. So if you look at all those notes on the side when you're filling out an application, use this document to make sure you don't miss anything. Next slide. Next slide is we have an additional blank page to this. I know this is funny to show you a blank page, but this is any additional information you may want to add. Say, for instance, you are getting a gift of money from a parent or a relative or a sibling. You would note down in this, this is a good way to explain to the board, I'm getting a gift of this amount of money from a sibling, a brother, or a friend. You will denote that there. If you have any additional information on your premises where you could not fit it on the front page, you can add it to this page for the local board to see, especially if it's a multi-floor building or a large complex. So use this document page there to give any additional information you feel will close any of the gaps on the financial end of it or on the license description of the premises. Next slide. All right, applicant statement. All right, this applicant statement page, you look, there's a lot of items there, a lot of numbers in each of the categories. This is what you're signing under pains and penalties. You're signing this, and the only person that can sign this is someone that is listed in question number 6, of even having direct or indirect interest in the license. It asks for the person's name at the top. You check off what your status is as being a corporate officer, an LLC manager, sole proprietor, or partner. All right. And you complete the information. You need to redo this very, very clearly, because this stays with the application and this stays with the license after it's approved. So if you were not truthful anywhere in the application process, this is where it will come back to hurt you. All right. This is where the local board could charge you a perjury for giving a false statement. So you want to make sure you read all this, and the person that signs this has authority to sign this. All right, we will not accept it if an attorney signs it who doesn't have authority, because he's not listed in question number 6. Or someone in the office or someone filling it out is not listed in question number 6. It will not be acceptable. This is the applicant statement, and it's very important to remember this stays with you the life of the license. So remember, fill out everything, fill it out truthfully and complete. You'll have no problems. Next slide. All right, the next slide is called the entity vote. People call it the corporate vote, the LLC vote. All right, this is required. This page is required for all corporations, all LLCs, all limited partnerships, all need to fill out this here with the general partner, et cetera, whatever is needed on it. A sole proprietor means an individual owner that is operating as Ralph Sacramone, doing business as Sacramone's Restaurant. You're not required to fill out a corporate or entity vote. It's important down the line. You're going to put the name of the business entity at the top, along with the location where you're going to be, the date the vote took place. You will check off any transaction, and most of these there will be a new license transaction, and you could have a pledge in it. You check off vote, the person authorized to sign, and then the person you are appointing as manager. So if I'm appointing Ryan Melville as manager or Danny Green, their name will appear in there. And then the person signing down the bottom must be listed in question number 6 with either the title of authorization to sign. This goes on the exact same thing. If someone signs the entity vote and it's not listed in question number 6 or was given authority and approval by the local board or the ABC, this form will not be accepted. Next slide, please. All right, that concludes the ABC part of the presentation. I knew I moved pretty quickly, but we made highlighted areas to help you along the way. So when you're filling out your application, you want to use these documents that Boston has submitted on these slides and with the ABC. At this point in time, I'm going to turn it back to Kathleen Joyce and Danny Green. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Thank you, Ryan. And also thank you, Steve. A lot of great information and great resources on today's call. We're going through a lot of it very quickly, but I will talk about some support and help for your application at the end of my portion of the presentation. But right now, I get to talk about the good news of how you actually get to pick up your license and start serving that alcohol that you've received a license to serve, which is great news. So as Kathleen talked about earlier, the license application process starts with the local board, that is the Boston Licensing Board. It also ends with us at the Boston Licensing Board. So after both the local board and the ABCC approve your application, the ABCC then sends that approval back to the local board to issue that license. When that happens, staff from the board will email you or whoever the applicant contact was that was listed in the application. And you'll get an email that says, congratulations, your license has been approved, and we will issue it as soon as you provide with us these following 3 documents, maybe 2, depending on your capacity. The final things we need in order to issue your license and get you in business and up and running are a valid certificate of inspection from the Inspectional Services Department, or ISD. That's a city document. That's basically showing that all life safety measures are in place and you've passed an inspection by the building folks. The second, this is if your capacity is 50 or higher, you will also need a valid fire assembly permit from the Boston Fire Department. Similarly, this is for real life safety reasons. And finally, you need proof of liquor liability insurance. That is state law. That is all premises across the entire state that serve alcohol on premise. Beginning this year, licenses must be picked up in person at the licensing board. We are no longer emailing licenses. They have to be picked up here in person, room 809 of Boston City Hall. So once we get the approval from the ABCC and these 3, maybe 2 final documents, you're in business. Next slide, please. So once you get your license, make sure you don't lose it. It is so important that you renew your license annually in the month of November. The season is upon us right now. This is the busy time. This is go time. Under state law, all licenses to sell alcoholic beverages, whether on-premise or off-premise, liquor stores too, have to be renewed in the month of November, or else that license will be canceled. A complete renewal application includes your signed ABCC renewal form, your signed licensing board renewal form, and to Ralph's point earlier, the only people who can sign those are those who have been disclosed and approved throughout the licensing process. And then also your renewal fee, which does vary a little bit depending on the type of license you have and your capacity, but typically that ballpark is around $2,000 to $3,000 annually. Once we have those 2 signed forms and your renewal fee, your license is renewed and you are in good standing. Once renewed, you will get your new license once you receive those same documents we needed to issue your license in the first place, which are your ISD certificate, your fire certificate if your capacity is 50 or above, and your proof of valid liquor liability insurance. And again, to renew your license, same thing. The renewal process is done online, but licenses have to be picked up physically in person at the licensing board. That'll be done in the month of December. We've thrown a lot of information at you today. We are here to help. So a couple different ways we do that. You can come in, right? We are located in room 809 at Boston City Hall. We do recommend that you make an appointment if you're going to come in, because sometimes they do take a little bit to walk people through an application. You can also call our office anytime. I will drop the phone number, actually, if Green, if someone can, to call us anytime, 617-635-4170, or email us at licensingboard@boston.gov, all one word. And also really happy, this has been going pretty well so far since August. We've been doing liquor license application office hours on Zoom. You don't need to leave your house or your premise or wherever you work. You can hop on Zoom and get one-on-one application support and help with licensing board staff. We do this every other Wednesday. We have one actually scheduled tomorrow. From 3 to 5, we take one person in from the waiting room at a time. So you really are getting one-on-one application support. The link to sign up for office hours is right there on the screen, boston.gov/licensing. And next slide. Finally, we are also doing info sessions similar to this in neighborhoods across the city. We did one last week, packed room at Dorchester Bay Economic Development Center in Upham's Corner. Really great turnout there. We're hoping we have similar turnouts at the remaining 3 that we're doing the rest of this month. It's every Thursday in October at 2 p.m. We're hitting as many neighborhoods as we can. So this Thursday, we'll be doing a Hyde Park Mattapan focused info session. Next week, JP Roslindale, West Roxbury. And then on Halloween, Roxbury South End. Hope folks turn out to those. Again, good opportunity to hear another info session like this and get your questions asked in a little more of an intimate setting than this. Next slide. And there is a QR code to register for the in-person info sessions, or also just get more information on them. And with that, we've covered a lot of ground, but there's also good questions that I see in the Q&A. So Corrine, I'll turn it back to you to start fielding some of these questions for us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. We are going to take some time to answer your questions. I will start with the first question here. The first question is, are the liquor licenses available only for restaurants or for supermarkets, grocery stores as well?
I would love to answer that one, actually. So if we were talking about the new legislation that just passed, that was the focus of the early part of Kathleen's presentation, those licenses are for on-premise only. That being said, there are licenses available for supermarket, grocery store, what are called package store licenses. The application process is very similar to the process that's been outlined today. You will just be applying for a Section 15 package store license instead of Section 12. There are some in the quota. However, the board is still going to have to find public need the same way it would for an on-premise license. Otherwise, the application, the process is very much the same. Feel free to reach out to our office if you need help going through that process.
Great. So we have another question. It says, good afternoon. Am I able to complete this application if I am still in the process of setting up my business? Can it be submitted as a sole proprietor until the business is set up?
Danny, you want me to grab that one?
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
All right, sure. The answer to that is no. Here's what happens, because if you come in as a sole proprietor and the local board advertise you as sole proprietor, then you change to a corporation, you have to start the process over again. You have to be re-advertised, alert all the abutters and everything under your new corporation name. So you won't be able to do that if you're sole proprietor versus a corporation. Plus, when you submit the document, if you're coming in as a sole proprietor, but your question number 6 is not going to match that. If you're thinking down the road, you're going to be a corporation where there'll be a president, treasurer, secretary. It may be you, but it's not going to gel. So you won't be able to do that.
Thank you for that answer. Next question. And this is a great question, what are the most common mistakes that the ABCC sees on an application?
Common mistakes is question number 6, which says direct or indirect interest in the license, listing all the individuals. We find that people have the wrong, their corporations that they have registered with the Secretary of State's office don't match the titles. We see people forget and leave out individuals. They'll submit articles and it shows another name on it that's never been disclosed in question number 6. And what that does is that means we have to send the application back to the local board for them to approve that individual that was never listed. So the question number 6 is seen to be the biggest issue we see. That's why we give you so many examples of how you should be answering the question. We can't tell you what to answer. We only can give you the advice and what information is needed to be listed there. And then the other question we see is also question number 3. Given complete description of your licensed premises, including all the floors, the basement, and the areas that are needed.
And
Thank you.
that matches exactly with kind of where we spend the most time also helping folks with the application process, is making sure the description of premise is robust enough, and also making sure that everything on the Secretary of State's website matches who you're disclosing in section 6. So good to know that we're seeing the same kind of mistakes here.
Thank you. Okay. How do you complete this section naming officers if you are a nonprofit? So this is for the ABCC. Should you list the directors?
The question is yes. All right. If you are a nonprofit corporation, you have a president, treasurer, secretary. You can have directors, trustees, wherever it is. You need to list everybody that you have registered with the Secretary of State's office. You list everybody down there. All the information is given the same way. The only difference is when you get to percentage of ownership, all of them will be 0 because it's a nonprofit. But everything else is required. Directors are to be listed, trustees, items to that extent. Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Can a non-alcoholic beverage apply for the license? That's a little confusing. So whoever asked that question, can you re-ask that question and we'll get to that a little bit later. All right. From an anonymous attendee to confirm, a nonprofit does not need to put officers of the nonprofit or the quarry. We just went over that. You have to put them down as officers. It's different when it comes to the ownership question. That would be 0 as it was just outlined. How about the quarry question? If it's a nonprofit, do they have to submit quarries as well?
Yes, queries will be submitted on everyone that has operational control. Now, if it's a board of directors for a nonprofit consisting of 50 or 60 board members, you have the right to fill out what we refer to as a beneficial interest exemption form for them. And that form, it asks for detail of why, because some of it's hardship, because board of directors may be located all over the United States and to get queries and everything on them. So the commission is very business friendly. They give you the opportunity to present it that way. But everybody else that runs the day-to-day affairs, you will need to list them. And there is that opportunity there if you are requiring or requesting to file a beneficial exemption, it will be considered. We don't say it's guaranteed. You have to give a reason why you won't be able to get those queries for those individuals.
Okay, we have a question here. The BLB accepts the application, but the ABCC does not. What happens next? Is there even a scenario that would happen?
That scenario seems very rare to me. I don't think that's happened in the 3 years I've been here. More often, what may happen, and Ralph or Ryan might want to step in, but what may happen more often is the BLB will approve an application and the investigator you're assigned to at the ABCC may return that application no action because there's something missing in the application or they need more information. We will usually work with you, and so will the investigator, make sure you have the information necessary to get back to the ABCC so they can make a determination. A rejection I've seen very rarely, but I imagine if it's rejected, it's rejected. Ralph, Ryan, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think also wanted to, so everybody remember it's a 3-step approval process. The ABC has no jurisdiction on an application approval until the local board decides that there is a public need and common good and approves that application. At that point, it is sent to us, and then the process begins. And as Danny referred to, sometimes we have to, the commission at the ABC is really business friendly. we disapprove very few applications. We always give you the ability to correct your mistakes in the application, but you have to go through the process. So we may not approve it. We'll send it back what we call return for no action, RNA, and it gives the opportunity for you to fill in any missing information, correct the information that may be incorrect at the Secretary of State's house or the premises description. But other than that, everything else starts with the local board to determine public need and common good. Once it's approved, then the ABC jurisdiction comes in. We license the business, we vet the individuals, and then the commission approves it. And then it goes back to, as Kathleen and Danny talked to you earlier, back to the local board, and then all of their requirements begin to fall into place at that point.
Thank you. All right, we're coming to the end, but I want to get in a few poignant questions. So because zip code restricted licenses must be returned to the city after it's in use, it's not in use, is it improper to pledge your license in financial transactions?
So restricted licenses cannot be sold. There is no monetary value in the license itself. So pledging of that license isn't going to get you very far. And in fact, the board typically would not approve that pledge because there is no collateral in that. There's no monetary value to the license. It cannot be sold.
Thank you for that. You already answered about grocery stores. How about are these liquor licenses available for event spaces or function halls?
Yes. So the answer is yes. Obviously, if you're not preparing food on site, that would take you out of consideration for the geographically restricted, so not the zip code restricted ones, as Kathleen talked about. But if you can make the argument that this is a community gathering space, great, potentially one of those 15. If not, potentially one of just a quota license, or there are other pockets of restricted licenses for certain neighborhoods and districts of the city from prior years and prior legislations. So yes, we encourage you to apply no matter what your business type is, even if you don't fit squarely into this new specific legislation.
Awesome. Are there any agencies that specialize in liability insurance policy, or are there any best practices in identifying those policies? Maybe the MRA might be able to answer this question.
Yeah, so most insurance providers are going to be able to quote you on a liquor liability insurance policy. I would shop it around. I wouldn't necessarily go with the first one. There are firms that have more expertise dealing with restaurants and restaurant book of business than others. So it is worth having that conversation with your insurance agent. And then also, Hospitality Mutual is the insurer of last resort, which means they have to write you a policy. And so if you are struggling to get someone to write a policy for you, I would recommend going to Hospitality Mutual, and they are the licensee of last resort, the insurer of last resort. So they are required to write a policy for you. And that's going to be based on your projected alcohol sales and food sales, et cetera. What is your history? So definitely shop it around, definitely talk to your insurance agent.
Okay, if the business is owned under a private trust, who would the trustee be listed as the person on the application?
There we go. That person will be listed in question number 6. Whoever the trustee is of the trust, and if there are beneficiaries, they all need to be answered. You'll be able to answer them either in question number 6 or in addendum A. They all would have to be disclosed.
There's a question about language assistance, and the information will be available in other languages such as Spanish. And is there assistance as far as what one-on-one in Spanish as well? Maybe Danny, you can talk about that.
Yeah, so of course there's assistance available. It's always best if you let us know ahead of time that you will need assistance. That way we can make sure that we secure an interpreter at no cost to you. We always have all of our public notices for our hearings include that notice as well, so anyone of any language ability can assist. And also, if you show up to our office and are not English proficient, We can also call in a translator over the phone using what's called the language line to make sure that you're able to work with us in real time. And also that is at no cost to you.
I know we're over time, but I'm going to get one question in, and then I will say if you have a question about renewal fees, that is on the website, so I would just Google that. But the last question I will have you all answer is, will the license be issued during the business build out of this space? So when is this license getting to a business owner, and when in that process will they
Yeah,
see
so that was kind of covered in my section is when do you actually get your license? That is after build out is complete, after you've had your inspections done, after you have your final certificates. So that's when the building department of inspectional services signs off, fire department signs off if your space is 50 or more capacity. So getting your license issued is the last step. Your build out should be done before then. You can apply for a license while your build out is still happening, but you cannot have your license issued to you until build out's done. Ralph, did I miss anything? I know you unmuted yourself.
No, right on the money. You like you do pre-construction. You can apply for a license under pre-construction. As Danny says, the license will not be issued because of state law requiring all the essential documents.
Right.
And we will approve according to plans, so we have no problem.
Awesome. And ABCC, how long does the process generally take?
Once the application reaches the ABC, we would say if the application is perfect and everything is there, you're probably looking somewhere around a 4 to 5 week process to get it done. That's if it's perfect. If it's not perfect, it could stretch out for the longest time, depending what's missing. And especially if there is an RNA and we have to send it back, because that means Boston's got to rehear it to reapprove it. Now you're talking about extending 4, 8, 12 weeks. So it's important that you use all the tools we gave you to fill out that application.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that question. At this time, we're going to answer no more questions. I think we got to almost all of them. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. As it was said earlier, please reach out to us if you have any questions. There is ample amount of information on the Boston Licensing Board's website. Please reach out to them. I think Danny said a few numbers and emails. Boston Licensing Board at boston.gov is your best way of contacting them. And if you have any questions, and at this point, we'll end the webinar. Thank you so much.